The easiest way, of course, is to use a curve. One of my favorite ways of building is to draw a curve, cubic by CVs, and I'll use the origin and lathe a curve around the origin. So I'll hold down Control, snap to grid, and I'll just create a very quick and dirty bullet. Again, it's just the shells that are really ejecting here. So I want a little bit of rifle, a little bit of kind of detail to these shells. Okay, something like that should work out pretty well. I'll do a revolve around axis, and that should about do it. If I hit F, that's a pretty large bullet. I'm going to add in some detail so that the bullet can actually hold up in a close-up shot. There we go, something like that. And I'll freeze it from there and delete the originating curve. I'm going to make this a little smaller. I'm also going to center the pivot. I'm going to use the Move Center to Bounding Box option and then move the bullet back to a value of 0 on the y-axis. If I move it to a wireframe mode, I'll probably want to scale this bullet down somewhat, and I'll also scale it on the X and Z axes. So I have a longer, thinner casing. I'll take the center pivot and I'll freeze it. I could apply a really simple shader to this with texture maps, etc. All I'm really going to do is apply a Phong shader, which I'm going to rename in the Materials Manager. I'll call this the casing material, maybe be a little bit more specific, the bullet casing material. And I'll give this object a fairly bright specular highlight and fairly broad as well. I'll make the color of the bullet very light colored, and we could even give it a little bit of a reflection, except I don't want to really reflect the environment, which is nothing at this point. So I'll leave the reflections off for now. I probably won't. Ah, there we go, I can actually see the bullet. Alright, so I'm going to rename this to the bullet casing, and we're going to apply it into our ice tree. So the size is almost the same size as our current cylinders. So the way I'm going to do this is access the cartridge ejection ice tree, open it up by pressing Alt-9, and I'm going to replace the shape attribute, which is currently set to cylinder, with an instance shape. So if I look up my instance category of nodes, I could use the set instance geometry, which is a little bit slow when you're doing things like simple single object or hierarchical replacement without using animation. So I'm going to bring in the data access instance shape node and plug it straight into the shape input of my emit from null compound, and I'm going to point it by double clicking and using a pick session to my bullet casing. So it shows up as a reference. So now when we press play, I'm getting the actual instance objects, which happen to be a little small, so I'll have to work the size attribute through the ice tree. So the size being 1.5, if I set the size to 1, they should come out their original scale. Let me just move to a shaded mode. It's actually a little large, maybe 0.5. There we go. Maybe even a little larger. Okay, and if we look at the objects left behind, we've got our actual cylindrical bullet casings. You can actually see there's one right there. Alright, so the effect is coming along much better now. Last but not least, we need to create the shading effect for our laser blast, or for our trace.